I was just going to say that these people definitely do not care about the human cost or the economic cost to ordinary people. Many elites view ordinary people with a level of contempt that is impossible to even fathom. Like, they don't care about you, just resources to extract your numbers on a spreadsheet to them. They don't care about the fact you've got a life. So I can entirely believe that they're happy to escalate things for their own self-interest,
yes,
regardless of the cost of human life or, the cost of it to the economy.
当チャンネルでおなじみ、イギリスの保守系ポッドキャスト番組、ロータス・イーターズのメンバーが EU 首脳部、そしてヨーロッパ各国の指導者を糾弾しました。多くの日本人は、このウクライナ戦争をこう理解しているのではないでしょうか。ロシアは侵略者で、ウクライナは被害者。ヨーロッパはそれに立ち向かう正義の側だと。日本の報道も基本的にこの構図を前提にしています。支援は当然で支援しない方が問題だ。そんな空気すらあります。また、高市早苗首相も、ゼレンスキー大統領からの X での就任祝いの投稿に対し、ロシアの侵略に立ち向かうウクライナという趣旨の言葉を用いて返信しました。もちろん引き金を引いたのはロシアです。では、ロシアが突然狂ったように突発的に戦争を仕掛けたのでしょうか。そうではないはずです。彼らには彼らなりの積み重なった理由がある。ただし、ここでは長くなるのでその問題には触れません。それよりも、なぜ戦争は終わらないのか、なぜ和平の話は出ては消えるのか、なぜヨーロッパはここまで継続に前のめりなのか。もし正義のための支援だけが理由なら、もっと早く終わっていても不思議ではありません。しかし和平案一つとっても、ロシア側からすれば、とても容認できないようなものを EU は突きつけてくる。この動画では、善悪の断定は一旦横に置き、代わりに、戦争を長引かせる構造と置き去りにされた国民の声について、ロータス・イーターズのメンバーの言葉をご紹介しながら見ていきたいと思います。
So, as we all know, the war between Ukraine and Russia continues, and we're now a very, very long way away from the Donald Trump, when I become president again, we're going to end the war on day one territory. There's been many, many times now, countless times really, where, peace negotiations have come and gone and broken down and, will they, won't they? But it seems that the interests on both sides to prolong the war and keep it going are very, very strong. And it seems that they seem to be winning out every single time. So there was a recent conference in Berlin that Trump and the Americans attended along with European allies, and I suppose we ought to just listen to what Trump had to say about this particular meeting quickly.
I had a long talk with President Zelensky. Also, I spoke with the heads of Germany, Italy, NATO, Finland, France, the United Kingdom, Poland, Norway, Denmark, and the Netherlands. We had very long and very good talks. And again, I think things are going along pretty well. And I think we're closer now. And they will tell you that they're closer now. We had numerous conversations with President Putin of Russia. And I think we're closer now than we have been ever.
So as you can see, very convincing stuff. Now, the thing about this all is that, of course, as well as Trump and Washington and also our wonderful European leaders, all basically saying that obviously the pursuit of peace is the highest ideal and everyone's working towards it
That's presumably why they scupper every peace plan that comes along.
With the utmost effort. It does seem to be the case that whilst this goes on, the actual war talk, the rhetoric around war seems to escalate with every passing week.
There is also an incentive here for America in particular to drag its feet along the peace process. Not only is it obviously not as much of a security issue because it's not close to their borders, at least the sort of Ukrainian front, obviously Russia's not that far away.
And we hear both narratives equally. The first one is the one that you've just said. We just need a little push and the Ukrainians will win. Just a little push, just a little nudge. The Ukrainians are going to win. And the other narrative that we hear simultaneously is that Russian troop transports will be turning up on the borders of Britain 2 weeks from now if we don't, commit every possible resource to their defence. So which is it?
Well, it can't be both, and I
No.
would contest that it's neither, to be honest.
Right, but as far as the European leaders are going, obviously we saw very recently that France is going to bring back a voluntary conscription, which I think is a bit of a contradiction in terms.
It's impossible to have those two things.
What? Is that like a consensual rape or something? I mean, how does this work?
Voluntary slavery is another potential way of looking at it.
Well, despite the fact that France is the second best armed military currently in Europe behind Poland, it has about 200,000 troops with about 45,000 in reserve.
They are Frenchmen, though.
The size of their actual boots on the ground army.
But anyway, the point is as well that they are pushing for basically 18, 19-year-olds into a state of basically just getting conscripted into the army, having a little trial run, see how you find it. But really, they're hoping to find about 50,000 new participants by the by the year of 2035, and so 50,000 men. An extra 50,000 levied over the space of the next 10 years. But of course, and this is a question that we're going to keep coming back to, we'll find throughout this segment, what on earth do we expect the state of France to look like by the year 2035? Right?
Not very French.
Given everything that they're going through.
Presumably the rest of France will look like Paris looks like today.
Right. Mm-hmm. And so you have to ask your question, will they manage to fulfill that quota, and why on earth do they actually expect young French men to actually fight for that state?
I think they're in an even worse situation in terms of getting people to participate than even we are. Obviously, they've got a larger standing army, but their demographic situation is worse, their financial situation is worse, and all the factors disincentivizing people from joining are worse there.
Yeah, absolutely.
ヨーロッパは今、ロシアの侵略を止めるために結束が必要だ、と繰り返します。支援は正義で、軍備拡張や制裁もやむを得ない、表向きはそういう筋書きです。徴兵制の流れは、ここで語られているようにフランス、そしてドイツにも起きています。ではヨーロッパ各国は、冷静に事態を検証した結果としてこの選択をしているのでしょうか。来るかもしれないという恐怖が検証抜きで前提化していく。いや、もしかしたら恐怖すらなく、来ると煽り、軍備を拡張することが目的になっているのかもしれません。
And so let's listen to Rutte of the NATO just talking.
We need to be ready. Because at the end of this first quarter of the 21st century, conflicts are no longer fought at arm's length. Conflict is at our door. Russia has brought war back to Europe, and we must be prepared for the scale of war our grandparents and great-grandparents endured. Imagine it, a conflict reaching every home, every workplace. Destruction, mass mobilization, millions displaced, widespread suffering and extreme losses. It is a terrible thought. But if we
Now, I just want to stop it there because, and perhaps it's my lack of imagination, I concede, but short of a full nuclear exchange, I just can't envision a future that he's actually suggesting here. What, boots on door to door? What, so the Russian army that has not been able to even advance through the entirety of Ukraine over the past 4 years is going to go city to city, nation to nation, across Europe?
I don't know. I got something different from that. When he was saying there's going to be conflict going from door to door, disruption all across Europe, I was thinking, yeah, we do have that, actually. It's not the Russians, though.
No.
It's the people they imported.
Yes. Yes.
But apart from that, I agree with him.
It's a very strange irony, isn't it, that the European Union that seems to claim that unity in Europe is the greatest possible ideal, is that actually through their policies they have managed to unite Europe against them.
Yes.
And everyone actually despises their technocracy, their total seeming hatred and disgust
But it's just
for the actual heritage of Europe itself.
It's just this standard thing that the elites do.
And then, of course, we had it not only from the EU, but our own country as well, which sort of straddles that territory still, but from our very own newly appointed MI6 director, who
we all continue to face the menace of an aggressive, expansionist and revisionist Russia seeking to subjugate Ukraine and harass NATO. I find it harrowing that hundreds of thousands have died, with the toll mounting every day because of Putin's historical distortions and his compromised desire for respect. He is dragging out negotiations and shifting the cost of war onto his own population. But Putin should be in no doubt. Our support is enduring. Alongside the grind.
So, really, the long and short of it is that we have our propaganda here in Europe, the Russians have their propaganda over in Russia, and ultimately no one's really willing to concede. When she talks about him scuppering peace talks, it's as if one of our very own Prime Ministers, Boris Johnson, just didn't exist in the most open bit of knowledge about the war that we possibly have.
There's a lot of open lying going on, in that the actual real situation is that the Western powers, particularly Western Europe and the United States, have been pushing to scupper peace talks from early on in the conflict onwards, pretty much, because they want an ongoing proxy war with Russia, because not only are there financial incentives there, but also the institutions are still geared up to deal with Russia as an antagonistic enemy, all the way back from the Cold War, particularly the intelligence agencies which she represents.
Yeah, and then we get to Sir Richard Knighton, the Chief of Defence, and he gave a speech yesterday as well, saying, "The situation's more dangerous than I have ever known during my career, and the price of peace is rising. Our response needs to be beyond simply strengthening our armed forces. It needs to be a whole of nation response." He goes on to say, "I find myself in the position that none of my predecessors during my career have faced, looking at the prospect of the largest sustained increase in defence spending since the end of the Cold War, and this deterrence is also about our resilience as a nation to these threats. It's about how we make ourselves a harder target and harness all of our national power, from universities to energy infrastructure and manufacturing industry." What manufacturing
He's
industry?
listing off the things that have been decimated.
Just listing off
The
things
ones that we outsourced to China.
Yes, all of these things that we've systematically just dismantled and destroyed and sold off for decades.
Can I do my little thing on him as well while we're here? Do you want to scroll up to his picture?
Yep.
He hasn't got his full medal regalia on there. I'll just point out, this chap who is saying that we need to sacrifice our sons and daughters, he's never seen active combat.
Oh, really?
All of those medals, fancy rank, commitment to send our sons off to die, he's never been in active combat. Not once in his entire career.
And little chance of him going there now, I imagine, either.
No,
his age.
Him and his drinks cabinet might get to within a couple of 100 miles of the front line, possibly.
Yeah, it really is the Blackadder joke. You know,
Yes.
Captain Darling and I will be right behind you. It's like about 35 miles behind you. And the reasoning as to, a bit of chest puffing and, a bit of peacocking and trying to show your strength. The point is that only, of course, works if the enemy believes in the strength of its opponent. And as we've just covered here, systematically, all of these things don't work anymore. The universities have become ideological training camps for progressives who don't really understand the first thing about reality or war or strength or power or politics for that matter. Energy infrastructure has been totally crippled by green levies and basically having the highest energy costs in Europe. Our manufacturing industry doesn't exist. From my own town of Scunthorpe, which is now just a steelworks as a museum piece, and harkening back to the industry that we once used to have. We can't even create our own steel from scratch anymore without importing the raw materials from abroad. So when we're caught in that, I don't entirely see how we're going to be able to build all of the munitions and things that we'll need for that war. And what's more as well, do I even really need to talk about the NHS and how well that does to look after our sick and wounded and the fakers as well? Yeah, and the fact that our leaders happen to be the most gullible, dribbling people that we could ever wish for.
And I know that we like to criticise how much we mothball our military and how it's not really prepared for war. But I do think that this notion of, the Russians will sweep through Europe and there's nothing we can do about it is a bit ridiculous, because even with the current state of European standing armies, there's enough people there that could put up a considerable fight and enough political will. And also, were the Russians to all of a sudden decide to invade Europe for some insane reason, the United States would at least be sending equipment over at the very least, which they're already doing for Ukraine, to help other European countries and carry on the proxy war. And so this notion that, we're not prepared and the Russians could take over, I think is a scare tactic to get people involved in the military, as well as support greater military spending and potentially higher taxes and things like that.
But even if Russia do walk away with all of this new territory and whatever peace deal eventually ends up happening, it's not going to be that a peace deal is signed and then it's the immediate fresh campaign into the rest of Europe again. It will be years and years of consolidating on the gains that they've actually made. And
also, Putin, he's spent a lot of political capital on this conflict, and and we've got to remember that the Russian people are actually human beings. They don't want their sons and daughters, well, mainly sons, dying in a conflict, and if he starts another one, they're going to be pretty upset about it.
Yeah.
ロシアは危険な国というイメージがあります。武力や恫喝を用いることもありました。ただ同時に、ヨーロッパ全体を飲み込むような侵攻能力があるのかは別問題です。実際に、今回のウクライナ戦争で明らかになったのは、核兵器の存在は一旦置いておくとして、実はロシアの軍事力はさほどではないということではないでしょうか。ハリボテとまで言う人もいます。まずロシアは広大な国土を持つ一方で、戦争を長期に維持する条件が厳しい国です。人口密度は低く、インフラは弱く、補給線は長くなりやすい。ウクライナ戦争で露呈した大きな課題の一つも、結局は補給の継続性でした。次に人口と経済です。人口は減少傾向で、若年層の流出もあります。経済は資源大国である反面、資源依存が強く、制裁が長引けば体力は削られます。つまりロシアは、戦争が長引くほど消耗していく構造にあるのです。ただし経済面で言えば、ウクライナの方がはるかに深刻です。もちろん EU 諸国も同様です。ただし、ロシアに植民地時代のような侵略の野望がないことは、プーチンがこれまでに幾度となく公式の場で語ってきています。
Все время мы слышим, все время звучит. Вы должны, вы обязаны. Мы вас серьезно предупреждаем. Вы кто такие вообще? Какое вы имеете право кого-то предупреждать? Это просто удивительно. Может, это тем, кто так говорит, может быть, вам самим пора избавиться от спеси, перестать вести себя по отношению к мировому сообществу таким образом, отлично понимающему свои задачи, свои интересы. И пора от этого мышления эпохи колониального владычества. Хочется, так сказать, протрите глаза. Эта эпоха давно закончилась и никогда больше не вернется. Никогда.
ではなぜヨーロッパでは、ロシアが攻めてくるという恐怖が叫ばれるのでしょうか。ここで重要なのは、恐怖が必ずしも相手の能力だけから生まれるわけではない点です。経済停滞、エネルギー不安、移民問題、様々な分断、軍事力の空洞化、こうした不安がある社会では、外の脅威が必要になります。ロシアはその投影先になりやすい。怖いから備えるのではなく、備える政策を正当化するために、恐怖を煽るという構図です。もちろん、これらは多くの国民には見透かされていることですが、EU のエリートたちにはその声は聞こえてきません。
About the freezing of Russian assets as well. So the EU have recently just decided via an emergency clause, Article 122 of the EU Treaty, which is specifically so that basically countries in the East, such as the Orbán government, couldn't veto this. It only required a majority.
After explicitly giving Hungary a veto.
Yes.
They then just rewrote the law to take it away.
Yeah. And so they've basically used this legislation to seize hundreds of billions of pounds in Russian assets, mostly through what was it? Euroclear. That's it, Euroclear, where the majority of that money is, and also through individual private banks scattered across Europe. But yes, the majority of it is through Euroclear, and apparently the EU have created certain safeguards and shields so that the Russian government can't, well, basically so that if the Russian government seeks to retaliate with this lawsuit, as they intend to, then Euroclear and the rest of them will be entirely compensated for damage and the total seizure of these assets. But it seems like, again, just posturing and total suicide to do this. And so Orban here says, bypassing Hungary and raping European law in broad daylight, the Brazilians are making moves to seize frozen Russian assets.
People from Brussels, not Brazilians, by the way.
Yeah, what are they doing there? A declaration of war. Meanwhile, they demand 135 billion more from member states to fuel the conflict. Hungary will not play along with this twisted Brazilian scheme. And to be honest with you, irrespective of what Orban's loyalties are to Russia, this just does seem to be the sensible option to
just
rivals.
Talking about the cost of it, and it seems to be motivated by that, because it is costly for European countries at a time when money isn't exactly easy to come by. So it's a compelling argument.
ハンガリーのオルバン首相だけでなく、イタリアのメローニ首相も、ロシアの凍結資産をウクライナ支援に使う案について、法的な裏付けがしっかりした仕組みでなければ受け入れられないとして、反対を表明しています。そして何よりも見逃してはならない点は、ロシアの資産を勝手に使って戦争を継続したとしても、もちろんロシアは国際裁判所や各国裁判所に違法没収だとして訴えます。そしてロシアが勝った場合、EU はそれを全額保証しなければならないのです。もうお分かりですね。そう。それを最終的に負担するのは国民の税金になるのです。
We get to actual maneuverings as well. This is German troops to dig trenches on Poland's borders. So, because obviously you have Belarus on the Polish border, which is allied with Russia. And so from next April, soldiers will focus on defensive pioneering activities, such as establishing positions, constructing trench systems, laying barbed wire, or erecting tank barriers. And it also goes on to point out that Mr. Merz said that Europe had to prepare for the growing threat from Russia without United States support. He added, the decades of the Pax Americana are largely over for us in Europe and Germany. It no longer exists as we knew it. The Americans are now very, very aggressively pursuing their own interests, and that can only mean one thing, that we too must now pursue our own interests. And it also points out as well that all the time that this is going on, and the old guard, the technocrats, you know, Macron, Merz, Ursula von der Leyen, all these sorts of people are obviously playing this grand game of European strategy. Trump is meeting and kind of collecting politicians from the emerging right-wing parties in Europe as well.
Well, when they say we must aggressively pursue our own interests, if by our you mean a very small globalist elite,
yes,
then I believe them.
Yeah, I believe them too. Yes, for the rules-based order that they so just psychopathically believe in. And then we get to, of course, just the United States' national security strategy. Now, this was published recently, and there are just two particular paragraphs that I want to read from it, which is that it is a core interest of the United States to negotiate an expeditious cessation of hostilities in Ukraine in order to stabilize European economies, prevent unintended escalation or expansion of the war, and re-establish strategic stability with Russia, as well as to enable the post-hostilities reconstruction of Ukraine to enable its survival as a viable state. The Ukraine war has had the perverse effect of increasing Europe's, especially Germany's, external dependencies. Today, German chemical companies are building some of the world's largest processing plants in China, using Russian gas that they cannot obtain at home, and the Trump administration finds itself at odds with European officials who hold unrealistic expectations for the war, perched in unstable minority governments, many of which trample on basic principles of democracy to suppress opposition. A large European majority wants peace, yet that desire is not translated into policy, in large measure because of those governments' subversion of democratic processes. This is strategically important to the United States precisely because European states cannot reform themselves if they are trapped in political crisis.
I couldn't have put it better myself.
No, it's very, very well said. And I think it brings about the point that are all of these escalating rhetoric from the European leaders, is it simply them realizing the hour of day and that the United States is basically positioning their replacements, the next generation of European politicians, and so they're simply trying to get away as fast as they possibly can with escalating things? Now, I respect the fact that when I say all this out loud, it sounds very, very cynical. The larger point is that there is nothing that they will do. There is no evil, no treason, no betrayal that would surprise me anymore. They do not care for the value of
There's a brilliant
lives.
Rumble rant that somebody stuck in Sigglestone has stuck in. Somehow it just doesn't ring the same. Imagine soldiers jumping over the trench wall screaming for the international rules-based order.
I was just going to say that these people definitely do not care about the human cost or the economic cost to ordinary people. Many elites view ordinary people with a level of contempt that is impossible to even fathom. Like, they don't care about you. It's just resources to extract your numbers on a spreadsheet to them. They don't care about the fact you've got a life. So I can entirely believe that they're happy to escalate things for their own self-interest.
Yes.
Regardless of the cost of human life or, the cost of it to the economy.
So, I mean, that's my personal feelings on the matter. And as we have here as well, again, just a sentence that typifies the entire thing. President of Finland, Stubb, says Russia is the #1 threat for Europe and actually the Western world. And as we'll point out, though I'm not going to pretend that I think that Russia has warm feelings or a good disposition towards us in any way, I would suggest that actually the #1 threat to Europe is most certainly from within.
ヨーロッパの指導者たちは、この戦争の先に何を見据えているのでしょうか。公式の言葉は立派です。ロシア軍の撤退、ウクライナの主権回復、国際秩序の防衛、誰も反対できない目標です。しかし現実には、到達点がはっきりしません。ロシアを完全に敗北させるのか、これ以上進めない状態に追い込むのか、対面を保った停戦なのか、どれを明言しても、政治的に不利になります。完全勝利を掲げれば、核保有国との全面対立という非現実へ向かいます。妥協を口にすれば、これまでの犠牲は何だったのかが突き刺さります。だからゴールは曖昧なまま、戦争を続けること自体が目的化していくのです。これは狂気というより、構造の結果です。個々の判断は短期的には合理的に見えます。しかし長期的に見れば、損切りできないまま、ただ崩壊への道を突き進んでいるようにしか見えません。そして日本も、この問題の外側にはいません。制裁に参加し、凍結資産の問題にも関わり、正義という言葉を共有している以上、当事者性は増していきます。戦争は、始めるより終わらせる方が難しい。ヨーロッパは今、その難しさの真っ只中にいます。しかし何よりも忘れてはならないのは、ヨーロッパは、ロシアという敵を作って国民の目をそらすのではなく、ロータス・イーターズのメンバーが語っているように、少子化、経済の衰退、中国依存、エネルギー問題、そして移民問題、これらの課題に向き合い、国民の声を直視しなければ、崩壊という2文字は、まさに現実味を帯びてくるということです。もしかしたらその先にある、新秩序とやらを目論んでいる人たちがいるのかもしれませんが、そしてそれは、日本にとっても、決して遠い場所での話ではないのです。政治とは、誰のためのものであるべきなのか、今この問いが、突きつけられています。立ち上がれ、日本人。ご視聴ありがとうございました。